Well, good evening, everyone. Sad to say, Teresa will not be joining us tonight. She's not feeling very well. So it's going to be me and Andrea tonight talking it out. I have Andrea Perron with us tonight. She is the author of House of Darkness, House of Light, the supernatural trilogy, the story behind the 2003 feature film, The Conjuring. So I'm going to bring Andrea Perron on and we're going to discuss her experiences in the house she grew up in.
Hi,
Hello.
Scott.
How are you, Sammy?
Thank you for having me on your show.
Are
And
we,
I'm,
were we were looking forward to it.
well, I'm so sorry that Teresa is feeling under the weather. And please give her my very best and warmest regards. And I will, send out prayers and healing energy for her to get
That,
over whatever has gotten a hold of her.
that sounds wonderful. She might be watching chat tonight. She doesn't feel well enough to talk. She don't feel well, so hopefully she's watching.
No, that would be lovely.
That would be wonderful.
That would be great. Well, what I'm going to do is just leap right in, Scott, because there are a lot of people who think they know our story because they saw The Conjuring. The Conjuring bears no actual resemblance to our story other than the names are the same.
I figured.
There are, it was um, the, the story as it appears in the film was literally conjured up in the minds of two screenwriters who were very well intended. They had read my books. They were blown away by the real story. They wanted to include elements of the real story, even though the film is predominantly based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were, of course, the paranormal researchers and investigators that came to our home. My mother never sought them out. She had no idea who they were when they came to our door. They came because a young team of paranormal investigators had shown up. They said that my mother had called them. She said, no, she never did. We've never been able to reconcile how that happened. But I feel like there was something cosmic involved with that. Like they were supposed to be the first ones there, and they were college students, and they're the ones that sought out Ed and Lorraine Warren, who they met at a symposium at the University of Rhode Island not long after they came to our house. And, I really, I can't explain how that happened, but I do know that, the representation of it in the film is inaccurate. The representation in the film of our family somehow being godless heathens is inaccurate. All of us were born and raised Catholic. My father, before he met my mother, had intended on doing a tour of duty in the Navy, which he did, and then going into the priesthood when he was done with his service. But in the interim, he met my mother and fell in love. And so that was out the window. But my father was devout Roman Catholic, was born and raised in the religion, went to parochial school, served as an altar boy for many years of his childhood. And then when he graduated from high school, went directly into the Navy. When we were born, all of us were baptized. All of us made our first communion. All of us were part of the Catholic Church. And sadly, when we lived at the farm, we went to church together. I think it was the second Easter that we were at the farm. And my sister April, my baby sister April, who has sadly passed away, she died in 2017, very tragically. She said to my mother, as the priest was saying, "In the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost," she looked at my mother and in her big girl outdoor voice said, "See, Mom, God has ghosts just like we do." And when she did that, the priest followed our family out of the church and asked my father to take our family and worship elsewhere. And so that was our break with the Catholic Church. And I don't blame him. He was afraid, as so many people are afraid, that he would lose his following, his flock, that, we would be somehow a threat to his church. And so it was the last time that we all went to church together as a family. And, that was a really gross misrepresentation of who the Perrons were and are. The scene in the film where my mother is supposedly possessed and Ed Warren does an exorcism, that never happened. Ed Warren would never, ever have attempted to do an exorcism on his own. At that time, he was literally the only layman on the planet who was trained through the Catholic Church to assist in an exorcism, not conduct one.
Right.
He never would have done that. He would have considered it terrible disrespect to the exorcists that had trained him. My mother was not possessed. My mother was attacked during a seance that went so terribly wrong that it almost cost her her life. And it was a seance that the Warrens insisted needed to take place because they felt that she was being oppressed by a spirit in the house. They felt that there was some type of demonic influence in the house. I cannot say that I believe in demons. I have never seen a demon. I do not know if demons exist or not. I do know that evil exists, and I do know that whatever it was that attacked my mother that night, because I saw it happen. I was 15 at the time. I remember it very vividly, as if it happened last night. It's every time I talk about it, it's like reliving the trauma, but it's important to share this with other people, because people need to understand that there are dark forces at work in the cosmos, and whatever it was, the medium who they had brought to the house to conduct the seance, that my father was completely opposed to, did not want to happen in the house, was certainly upset that it was happening when his children were in the house, because 4 of the 5 of us were there. Of course, we were told to go upstairs and go away, and Mr. and Mrs. Warren insisted that it was absolutely necessary. It took Ed Warren more than an hour with the priest to convince my father to let it go forward. He wanted no part of it. He thought that it was a dangerous thing to do, and he thought that what was being done was an exploitation of our family. My mother trusted the Warrens and felt that they were there to help us, to do whatever they could to help us. But even Mrs. Warren admitted to me 40 years later when we went to see the film together out in California. She said, they were in over their heads the minute they crossed the threshold of that house, that they had never, ever experienced anything like it, and never experienced anything, after that was even remotely close to what occurred in our home. Um,
You,
the
you probably left with just shaking your head after watching that film. Like, what
Yeah,
the
no,
hell?
yeah, whose story is that? Because yeah,
Yeah, just
the scene where my mother is threatening to plunge a pair of scissors into the heart of my baby sister was a little hard to take. My mother did everything in her power to protect us. And the instant that she realized that there was something very unusual about the house and that it might be haunted, she did everything she could to convince my father to put the house on the market and sell it. And he's like, no, we just moved in here. There's nothing going on here. Your imagination's running away with you. I mean, he just didn't believe it. And he didn't believe it until it all started happening to him.
right.
Um, and and that's pretty typical of people that suffer severe hauntings, families that go through stuff like this. And our family certainly isn't the only family that's ever been through anything like it. um, I think that there were misrepresentations and mischaracterizations of the situation and of our family. The series of films that began with The Conjuring and have since morphed into many other stories are all based, some very loosely, on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren. It's not our story per se. And the screenwriters, as I mentioned earlier, did want to integrate some of our truth into the film and attempted to do that after reading my books. And the bosses at the movie studio said, absolutely not, no way. Um, they wanted those scenes taken right out of the script. And the reason was is they felt that it was so intense and so disturbing that it would literally run people out of the theater. And their attitude was, what's the point of making a movie nobody stays to watch till the end? So I personally give people a lot more credit for intelligence than that. And I think that people deserve the truth. And um, and I think they're mature enough to handle it for the most part. It was difficult seeing our story turned into a movie that was specifically for entertainment value, um, because my approach to this field and to the telling of our story specifically um, is for informational purposes, not for entertainment. I don't believe in finding my entertainment at the expense of other people. So it was hard to, go to one opening after another, whether it be the one in California or the one in Michigan or the one in Rhode Island, the one in Florida, Georgia. I saw the movie 9 times in 9 days, um, because they had me going all over the country to all the different premieres. And I, was watching these moronic idiots throwing popcorn at the screen, and laughing at our misfortunes. And so that was difficult. Uh, and I vowed then to make sure that our story got told properly.
Right.
Um, and so that's what I'm working on now, as a series that will air wherever. I mean, whoever ends up picking it up. But I'm working with screenwriters, I'm working with producers and directors and all the people that can bring the truth to light about our story, because I think that And I've discussed this with you, Scott. I think that it's a very important story to tell. And
Right.
I think that it is ultimately very enlightening and uplifting, even though there was a lot of darkness in it. And there were things that happened in our family's home that were life threatening to certain members of the family. My sisters, a couple of my sisters, um, came close to death with manifestations that occurred that were very dangerous. And my mother, of course, was attacked on several occasions. What happened the night of the seance with the medium, I consider to be spiritual malpractice. She threw open wide the doors to the netherworld and invited everything in. So, to determine who the culprit was that was haunting and taunting my mother, and whatever it was that did come through into that supremely haunted house was, I don't think, of this world. Um, and it physically picked her up in the chair that she was sitting in, and in a split second tossed her from the middle of our dining room into the middle of our parlor. And when her head struck the floor and she went silent, we all thought that she had died.
Wow.
It was the most traumatizing moments of my life. I hope never to revisit anything like that. And I think that part of my job and my message in the world is to forewarn people that that kind of evil exists so that they can avoid it. Because I truly, in my heart, believe that forewarned is forearmed. I think that I can only speak for myself, but I consider myself to be a spiritual warrior against the darkness in this world. And I choose deliberately every day to at least attempt to be a beacon of light and to spread as much love as I can in the world, because there is a mortal conflict going on, a struggle between good and evil, and love and fear. I don't think that hatred is the opposite of love. I think that fear is the opposite of love, and that hate is born of fear. So I work hard every day to bring as much love and light into the world as I can, even when I'm struggling, even when I'm sad, even when I suffer losses, like our family just did with the loss of our little 7-year-old. One of my parents' great grandchildren, my sister Nancy's grandchild, died 2 weeks ago in a
Sorry,
flood in
sorry to hear
Tennessee.
about that. That's horrible.
Terrible. And, this weekend I had a very big event to do in Michigan, and I had to go. Um, I had to go. I had made I had an obligation to go, and I don't even know how I got it, but I tried to how I got through it. But
I still
I
wanted to make sure you're okay for a night.
Yes. Yes, and that was very kind and thoughtful of you to reach out the way that you did, Scott, and to give me an out on this interview. But postponing this interview would not bring Lucy back. She was only 7 years old, and she was a light in this world. And so I am doing my utmost amidst the grief and the pain and the cruelty of this loss to thank you, uh, to be Lucy's light, to shed Lucy's light at a time when I feel immersed in the darkness of this loss. Um, it is, life is so difficult. I have to believe that there's a larger plan for every one of us. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really do. I appreciate everyone. Um, who has reached out to our family, who has reached out, offering their sincerest condolences. Um, life and death are precious. Life is precious. Death is precarious. It can come to any one of us in any given moment.
That's right.
And, if this pandemic has taught any of us anything, it is to make sure that we acknowledge one another and that we love each other powerfully and that we live in the present moment whenever we can. I think human beings are uh, far too busy dwelling on the past and projecting into the future to appreciate the present moment and the time that we do have together. And this past weekend, during one of my talks, I said, I don't think any of us will ever take each other for granted again. I don't think any of us are going to be like, oh, I'll see you in a couple of months at the next event, or, I'll see you next year here, or, there are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. Um, it has had a tremendous impact on my sister's faith to lose her granddaughter this way, someone who she helped raise. She and her mother and father lived with my sister for the first 3 or 4 years of Lucy's life. And so she was very active, a very active part of her life. And there was no happier child on the planet. She couldn't have had better parents. They couldn't protect her from this. This was what they call an act of God. Uh, just a terrible, horrific flash flood that literally swept her and the house away. I mean, it just gone. Everything that was her life, everything that it was gone in a matter of moments. Everything was gone. And they found her body 2 miles away from where her house once stood. How do you wrap your head around that? I don't know how, but I do know that while I grew up at that farmhouse, one thing that I do know is that there is something beyond our mortal existence, that Lucy is not dead and gone forever and ever, that there is some imprint of her left in this universe, and that she now serves a higher calling. And that's the root of my faith. And my faith was solidified living in that farmhouse, because when there was evil activity and spirit activity that was dangerous, or harmful or threatening to my family, the only thing that would stop it is invoking the name of God to intervene on our behalf. And it stopped it every single time. So for those who want to experiment with paranormal investigation or watch a few episodes of Ghost Adventures and think that they're prepared to, get into this field, I would highly suggest that they begin by reading everything that they can from reliable sources, which includes the testament of my family, which is chronicled in my books,
Right.
to prepare themselves for what is on the other side, because none of us are experts in the field. No one is.
Yeah.
And none of us have been there, to the other side, to another dimension, to through a portal. We've not been there. So we don't know, other than what we experienced in the farmhouse, the different kinds of manifestations, the different energies, the entities that would show themselves. Um, we don't know from whence they come. We don't know if they return or if they're always there, and sometimes they're visible and most times they're not. There are no answers to the questions that we in this field pose. There is only proper and respectful consideration given to the fact that there is something beyond this thing we call life, that it's not just ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Um, and this I know. This isn't for me a matter of faith. It's not a matter of belief. I trust and believe in my own senses. I lived immersed in that environment for a decade of my life. Once that door was opened, it never closed again. I have had numerous incidents over the course of my lifetime with spirit, um, including with my sister, who visits pretty regularly,
Oh,
checks
yeah.
in on my mother very regularly, and has made
That's
her
awesome.
presence known to us. And that brings me comfort. And in this day and age, Scott, when people are
Oh, you
dying
need
from
comfort
throats,
nowadays.
I would hope it brings some comfort to someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, growing up in a house with your strong religious values and a strong family to get through it. I mean, you're very fortunate for that.
Yes, yes. And I'll tell you, there are things that The Conjuring got absolutely right. Um, if you watch that film, most people would tell you that it leaves a very strong impression on them. Several, in fact. Um, First and foremost, that love conquers fear, that good conquers evil, and that the Perron family endured an extreme haunting that we all survived. And those are important impressions to leave on people. And that's all accurate. So, in the grand scheme of things, it did get the story right. You know, it's in the minutia and the details that were finagled with and, altered, and they relied a lot on method and formula in terms of what they thought would sell best through Hollywood. And, I can't really fault them for that. There is a Hollywood formula that most everybody relies upon in terms of putting out films. Um, but the story itself is much more spiritual. You've read the books,
Yeah.
it's really more of a love story than a horror story. Um, that it is a very enlightening story that will awaken you to the possibilities that exist in the universe. It speaks to, the core affection of a family and how strong we had to be to get through that. Um, and that strength persists to this day, especially when we lost April in 2017, my baby sister.
Sorry.
Um, that was, none of us will ever get over it in the same way that none of us will ever get over Lucy's loss.
Right.
It's not something that I think that anybody gets over. You learn to live with the loss. You learn to live with the hole in your heart. You learn to live with the darkness, um, and try to hold that person's memory in the light. And I think that that's the best that any of us can do. And I also believe that the paranormal um, is becoming a more relevant field by the day as we are in the midst of this horrendous pandemic where hundreds of thousands of lives are being lost and families are grieving, suffering immeasurable pain. And if our story offers them some hope that somehow those they've lost are still around them, are still with them in spirit, are watching over them, have not really gone. Perhaps their vessel has perished, but that their spirit, their soul survives and goes on. Their consciousness continues to exist. I find that a very compelling and a very healing notion. And it really isn't about belief for me. This is not rooted in one religion or another. I don't practice any specific religion. Even though I'm an ordained minister, but I don't practice a specific religion. I think that organized religion and spirituality are two totally different things. And so I really think of myself as a spiritualist, who can marry people, stuff like that. But it's, and God knows I believe in love. So, that's cool. But I think that we all have so much to learn, Scott. I think that we know nothing compared to what there is to know. And that this time that we spend on Earth is equivalent to what I refer to as soul school, where we grow and we spiritually ascend if we bother, if we put some effort into it, if we connect in that way with our spiritual essence. Then I think of it as soul school. I think of it as a place where, unfortunately, the test always precedes the lesson, so that basically we're unprepared for everything that gets thrown our way. God knows when COVID-19 hit, I realized very quickly that this was the paradigm shift. And, if anybody should have been prepared for it, it should have been me. I've been lecturing about its, being forthcoming for more than a decade,
Yeah.
Publicly. And yet I was as unprepared as anybody else was. I was as flattened and leveled and devastated by the loss of life, the sadness, the grief of it. It's kind of a blessing and a curse to be somebody that's, particularly empathetic, because not only do I feel my own pain, I feel the pain of other people. Oh, God. It's like having an 18-month long migraine. It's
Right.
mind boggling to me. But, on the other side of this, I think that there will be a great awakening, and that there will be a healing and a raising of the frequency and the vibration of human consciousness, that, as difficult as these days are, as this time is in the course of human evolution, that something on the other side of it will be perhaps a very painful lesson learned, but that we will have learned our lesson. I can only hope for that. And I find myself relying on hope more and more, because I see so much to the contrary. I see so much to the contrary. I think, our world is in tremendous flux and chaos right now. And there's so much division and so much conflict. And it's because we don't yet realize that there's no difference between any one of us, that there is only one human race, and that we are all divinely connected to each other. All of us are. There, separation, the whole concept of separation is an illusion. And I think that eventually that we will albeit too gradually, but eventually we will come to the full realization of oneness, that we are one, that we share this planet, that we were put here to love and honor each other, and that there will be a tremendous healing, and that the dark forces on planet Earth will eventually be vanquished. It's and that's hard. That's it's hard to I look at what's going on in Afghanistan today. It's medieval dark ages behavior of, dare I say, human beings that think that it's perfectly okay to sever the heads of others who don't agree with them. It's I can never I can't even imagine embracing a terrorist and saying, I love you, I forgive you. No, I don't. No, I don't. Burn in hell. Let there be a special hell for you to burn in. That's how
God,
I feel.
I say it all the time. Yeah,
Let there be
I
today.
understand
Just
their ideology. It's not there. There's nothing
I'm not
wrong
here
with
for
it.
everyone.
Yeah.
I'm not. I understand that. I have no tolerance for evil. I have no tolerance for evil. None. And I work every day to vanquish it in my own way. Every day. To be the light, to be a beacon of hope in the night. To lead others by the hand, even though we're all little children lost in the woods. All of us are. We know nothing of the grand master plan of the universe. I just feel in my heart that there is one, if that makes any sense, that there is one. I don't think that I would even want to go on if I couldn't embrace that notion. I have to. That's how I get through the
Yeah.
difficulties of life. So I'm not giving you any chance to talk to me, and I'm sorry. I'm just
No, I
and I'm
mean you pretty much covered, you know, basically what I finished talk about tonight. And um, if you want to talk about, like you said, about your own project you got going on now,
yeah, I'm
um,
working on that, and of course, COVID set everything back. But
yeah,
um,
yeah,
we've got almost the first season of my screenwriters and I have worked together to put. It was going to be originally feature films, one to coincide with each of the books, and during COVID, I realized that's inadequate. There's no way to flesh out 1,500 pages of stories
right,
in 6 hours of film. There's just no way. And, COVID really did change everything. I mean, it's going to be years before movie theaters are packed again with people. Most people, when this pandemic hit, if they didn't have a big TV, went and got one. And, now they all watch Netflix and
oh
Hulu
god,
and Discovery Plus. And, I mean, people
yeah,
are more comfortable staying at home and watching documentaries or musicals or horror movies or whatever at home and on their sofa in their jammies with their slippers on, where they've got a pause button and can go make popcorn, run to the bathroom. I think that it's going to be a long time, if ever, that the theater industry per se recovers fully from this pandemic. And it only made sense to me to flesh this story out in a series format because it really does cover 10 years. You can't cover that amount of time in 2 hours. You just can't. Not until the whole story, not until what's important about the story.
so it'd be more
So
like a documentary.
Yeah, it's really going to be like a docudrama
Oh,
series.
yeah, sure.
You know, like it's, it'll have actors that play us as kids and stuff like that, but it's going to tell the truth. I think people are ready for it, and I have
Oh,
respect for
I've been
people's
ready for it.
intellect.
As soon as the Conjuring came out, I was ready for it.
Yep, yep, yep. I know you immediately got the books and read the books and said, this
Yeah.
isn't that. No, so and I appreciate that. I have to tell you, it's really, it's nice to do an interview with someone who did his homework. Someone that actually bothered uh, take that, you know, uh, to invest the time and the energy and the effort into reading the true story instead of a couple of hours of watching a movie.
Right.
Um, I've done a lot of interviews, Scott, a lot. And you'd be surprised how many watched the movie and that was it and didn't do any research, didn't, and I mean, there's a ton of stuff out, between my website and, so many other places, hundreds and hundreds of interviews with me that are out there that it's very easy to research the true story on this, and they don't even bother. They just say, "Oh, The Conjuring, the Conjuring, and The Conjuring," and I'm like, "Okay, I see. I'm going to have to run this entire interview myself. I'm just going to have to because you don't know anything about this story at all." I never
Right.
say that, of
I
course.
well,
I'm
I
too
always,
polite to say that to a host, but I don't have to say that with you because you know
you know,
what you're talking
I
about.
always do research first. I like to feel prepared, before I go into it. And I've read tons of books on these things. I read your book, and I said I gotta get her on because I felt the same way you did. I said, what do you do with the Conjuring movie? I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I got you on to get it straightened out. I mean,
Well, I appreciate you inviting me. I do.
oh yeah.
I truly do. And
Anytime,
I'm so sorry
anytime.
Teresa couldn't join us tonight. And I
Well,
really, truly
maybe we
hope
can
she feels better.
maybe we can have you back down the
Sure.
road. That'd be fun. Once you get this documentary going and stuff, we can talk about that.
Well, it's well underway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a great deal that's already written. There are a lot of people involved with making it happen. I have
I'm,
producers, I have a director, it's partially cast. Uh,
well, I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, I think that when it does come out, it's going to come out at precisely the right time to be of real value to humanity at a time when so many of us have been so fractured, so broken open that we're ready for it. And, I've had, I mean, countless thousands of readers, countless thousands of letters from kind and loving and, people who are truly generous of spirit who have reached out to myself and my family um, to communicate about experiences that they've had and how it impacted their lives. And so I think that the real value in the books is that those that read it, those that immerse themselves in that story, ultimately find themselves liberated to tell their own story.
Oh, yeah.
Because most people that gravitate to our story have a story of their own and often have kept it secret for a very long time because they were afraid to tell their truth, to speak their truth. They were afraid that they would be shunned or that they would, suffer rejection of some kind from, people that they have respect for, who they're afraid will not respect them for sharing their story. And I think I'm down to have Andrea. I love. Is this from Teresa?
Yeah.
Oh, Teresa. Oh, God. Well, it's good to know that your typing fingers aren't sick, honey. It really is. And yes, dear, I will definitely come back and we'll have more conversation about this because it's really amazing how fast an hour can go.
Oh, I know. I know. Do
So,
you do you have oh, you want to talk about your the books?
could you say that again, dear?
You want to talk about in the Flickr?
In
The
the
book?
in the books, uh,
Yeah, about just two other books you have.
um, well, I actually have 5 books. The last book that I wrote is not even available publicly,
Mm.
not yet. I have been selling it privately to my readers for 2 years because it is
I'm
so
ready.
intense. And it really is. It's so intense that uh, I was it was kind of suggested to me that I keep it in my circle for a
Right,
while, that I not necessarily put it out into the world
right.
yet. And so I'm getting ready to do that. And it'll go out on Amazon, but it's about extraterrestrials,
Oh,
which is the,
that's one of our favorites.
yeah, it is.
I did a lot of research on that too.
Well, the next time that I come on, we can talk about that because the
I'd
next
love
time
to.
I
Love
come,
to.
uh, then it will be available everywhere. As it is right now, uh, I sell it just at events that I do, or people who are already my readers that are anxious to get a hold of it. But over the last 18 months, I've expanded it, done an extended edition, including some stories and things that have happened over the last couple of years that I felt warranted inclusion in it. Not just things that have happened to me, but things that have happened to members of my family, and particularly my mother. Um, and I also had a couple of incidents that were really so significant, and added some photographs that were so significant that I felt that they really needed to be included in it. And so I've shipped all of that extra material off to my publisher for layout. And then, of course, I'll have to go over it and make sure it's, to my specifications. And then I'll release it in October. So that's where I am right
I'll
now.
be looking for it.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that when it's out and ready, that I'll make plenty of notification about it. But the book is called A Wonder to Behold, and the subtitle is Guideposts for Engagement. You know what? You'd think I'd know my own title of my own book. Oh, I'm so tired. Guideposts for Intergalactic Engagement with Humanity. That's it.
No,
Thank you.
that's a good one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just been a very long day and I'm really tired. The words are
Uh,
not coming with the same ease that they normally do. And it's hot as hell down here in Florida. And I'm just, yeah, not one of
yeah.
my very best days, but hanging in there. You know what I mean?
I didn't mean to keep you out so late.
Mm.
Hey, you got your coffee there, right?
I do. I have my coffee here in my new Michigan mug,
Oh, I love that.
which my father would be very quick
Oh,
to
cool. I like it.
tell me that it's his Michigan mug
Oh, yeah.
because it was given to him by one of our friends when we were up there. And you know, my attitude about that is if the mug is in the cupboard, it's our mug and I'm using it.
Yeah. It looked like a big mug too, so.
Yeah, it really is. And it's got a moose and a bear and a deer on it, which
I love it.
all three of those animals call Michigan home. So it's lovely. It keeps my coffee hot for a long time. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad to have it. And I should, you know, be punished for drinking coffee this late at night. But fortunately, it does not keep me up past my bedtime. And I've got my little baby, my little dog. Hold on, let me introduce you to my Princess Peanut Buttercup. Come here, baby. Come here. There's my baby. This is what saved me during the pandemic. This is who saved me during the pandemic. Yes, I know, it's my baby. Her name is Princess Peanut Buttercup, and she is the center of my universe. She is the most wonderful little doggy, and I saved her off a highway that she was about to get killed on, and snagged her and took her in and fattened her up and took her to the vet and got all of her shots and got her spayed and claimed her as my own because she was obviously had been terribly abused.
And my dog's at my feet right now.
Well, it was about maybe a week to 10 days before I read the first article about an emerging coronavirus out of Wuhan province, China. And I knew right away that it was going to change everything. I knew it was going to be a global pandemic, that that no one had any immunity. I know it's my baby. And that it was going to turn the whole world upside down. And I'd only had her for, you know, like a week, a little more than a week. And I think that on some level, the universe sent her to me not only to save her, but for her to save me. Because, you know, I've really suffered through this along with everybody else that has any human feelings, any depth of emotion for their fellow man and woman. And she was my reason to get up every morning. She was my reason to keep going. She is my heart and soul. And she provides joy in my life. Joy. She's my baby. She's my baby. She's my baby.
My dog was whining because she wants my lap and she's too big for that.
That's okay. Well, this one's getting a little big too. Because when I found her, she was all skin and bones and injured. And yeah, you were just a little peanut. That's how you got your name, Peanut Buttercup. Yeah, she was just a peanut with nothing to her. And now she's a little fatty patty. She's fatty patty. Okay, sit in Mama's lap. Sit in my lap. And when we are done with Scott, the very nice man on the TV screen here, then we will go to bed and get the full body rub.
There you go.
A nightly ritual. Full body rub.
Well, it's wonderful having your own night. I mean, like I said, we gotta get you back again. I had so much fun.
Well, thank you. You know, I appreciate you inviting me. And I appreciate, you know, being able to clarify for people. You know, because a lot of people, it's not their fault. They don't know. You know, I mean, when you see a movie that says based on a true story, you assume that some element of it is true. And, you know, so nobody can be, yes, Debbie Emerson. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Yes. You just assume that at least part of it is true. And and I explained what is and what isn't. But there's a story that's so much bigger and so much more involved and so much deeper than could ever be covered in a 2-hour feature film, that I think people deserve to know the truth. I really do. And my mom said to me when I was writing the books, she said something I thought was very profound. She said that she was proud of me for doing what I was doing, as difficult as she knew it was for me. She said, because this is not the kind of story that one should rightfully take to the grave. And she's right about that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story that needs to be told. And I in my heart, I truly believe in my heart that we lived it for a reason. That our family was brought to that farm for a reason, that my mother was attracted to that house, found that house. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't. I think that's a fancy word that we use to explain away the otherwise inexplicable events of life.
Right.
I think that we were meant to be there. We were meant to have the experience of the decade we lived there. And then 30 years later, I was meant to tell the story precisely the way that I did. And I was guided by spirit. And in fact, the books are a little difficult to read if you rely on a concept of linear time. What I ask my reader to do is to suspend the notion of linear time. Because even though the books begin chronologically and they end chronologically in volume 3, from the moment we step onto the farm as owners till the moment that we leave in volume 3, the stories are all intermingled, so it's not like it goes, from 1 month to the next, to the next, to the next.
Right.
It's not written like that. I guess what I ask my reader to experience is that same sense of timelessness that we had living there, and to just be open to the notion that everything they're reading happened within the time frame that we lived there. But that it's, you see it at the end of it, you see it, well, Scott, you see the whole thing. It's like you can see when you finish volume 3, you can see how all of it transpired and it all makes perfect sense. But, the stories are intermingled.
That was a great way you put it too at the end.
Yeah, the stories are intermingled according to the type of haunting that occurred. What happened. There you go, sweetheart. Go down on your princess palette.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge for some people, but it also kind of pries open their mind. It kind of pries open their third eye and makes them think a little differently. So in that respect, I think it's valuable. It drives some people nuts, but they're beyond being able to think other than on Venn diagram time.
What fine with me? So
Yeah.
if I can do it, so yeah.
Yep. Well,
So,
if anybody, go ahead.
When that book comes out, I'm going to get it, I'm going to read it, and then maybe a month after, I'm going to have it back on. That sound good?
Okay. That sounds marvelous. I'll have more time. It's busy now. I'll be traveling.
The next few months are going to be busy.
Yeah, the next few months will be busy, but then, at the beginning of next year, it'll be quiet for a while.
Yeah, probably like in January.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Well, I thank you very much for having me on as your guest tonight. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I have a number of pages on Facebook. The fastest way to reach me is through my fan page. which is the Buttercup Brigade uh, on Facebook, and my administrator, Lynn Ann Bowling, can put us in touch with relative ease there, because she monitors the page very closely. I spend so much time writing and traveling that I don't get to spend a whole lot of time on social media. But if somebody's reaching out, she'll put them in touch with me, and it's
I got lucky.
yeah. Yeah, you did. You wrote to me through my website. And
Yeah.
so I believe that's how you got in touch with me, through
Yeah,
my
and
website.
I called you at night. We talked on the phone for a little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it was really
You're,
lovely.
you're so nice to talk to. I mean, I can talk to you forever.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. And I really appreciate joining you tonight. And I know our time is up, and I'm going to take my little dog for a walk and then go to bed.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm pretty
but
positive.
yeah, but we'll stay in touch, and I'll join you in the new year, and we'll talk about the galactic family that hovers above us.
Yep,
How's that?
sounds great.
Okay. And give Teresa my best, and thank you very much to your viewers and your listeners. I appreciate your kind attention and your affection, and your so many have expressed condolences, and my family deeply appreciates it.
Yeah,
So I will join you again.
looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Good night.